I pressed send on the text message and placed my phone face down on the kitchen table. The morning sun was just beginning to warm the tiles. The message simply read, "Thinking of you, Ma, I'll bring soup later." There was no immediate reply. There never was. I sat there, my hands wrapped around a cooling mug of tea, and waited for the old, familiar ache to start in my chest. The ache of waiting for a reply that wouldn't come, for a word of thanks that would never be said, for an apology that was decades overdue. But this time, something different happened. A quiet warmth spread through me instead. Not the heat of anger or the chill of sadness. A deep, calm warmth. After 42 years of being my mother's daughter, I had finally realized I was waiting for a conversation she was never going to have. And in letting that go, I found a freedom I never knew I needed. My mother, Usha, was a fortress. Not a cold, stone castle, but a beautiful, well-kept fortress with a very high wall and a single, heavily guarded gate. Inside, I knew, was a garden. I had caught glimpses of it sometimes, in the way she hummed while stitching a fallen hem, or in the sudden, breathtaking tenderness she showed a sick neighbor. But for me, her only child, the gate was mostly closed. Her love was not shown with hugs or praise. It was shown in perfectly pressed school uniforms, in lunchboxes packed with meticulous care, in silent, worried vigils by my bed when I was ill. My father was the gentle breeze that tried to soften her edges. "That's just how she is, Beta," he'd say, smoothing my hair after a scolding I felt I didn't deserve. "Her own childhood was difficult. She doesn't know another way to be." He was her interpreter, her buffer. He translated her sharp comments into concern, her silence into deep thought, her distance into a form of respect. I loved him for it. But as a little girl, I craved the translation to be unnecessary. I craved the direct, sunny warmth of a mother's smile meant just for me. Our home was quiet, orderly, and clean. Feelings were not things we discussed. They were messy, unpredictable things to be managed privately. Achievement, however, was currency. Good grades were met with a nod. A one competition earned a "that's acceptable." A failure was met with a long, silent stare that felt worse than any shouting. I became an expert in reading the weather on her face. A slight tightening of the lips meant disapproval. A single raised eyebrow was a question. A rare, fleeting smile was a treasure I would hoard in my memory for weeks. I learned to perform for the nod. I learned to shrink my messy emotions, my noisy joys, my loud sadness to fit the quiet house. I told myself this was how love looked. It was practical. It was responsible. It kept me safe, clothed, and educated. But in a quiet corner of my heart, a small, lonely question lived. If I stopped performing, would the love stop too? The first major crack in my understanding appeared when I was 17. I had won a major state-level debate competition. I came home, my trophy in my hands, my heart bursting with a pride I wanted to share. I found her in the kitchen, rolling chapatis. "Ma, I won, first place," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. She didn't look up. Her hands continued their steady, rhythmic work. Did you remember to pick up the dry cleaning?" The trophy felt heavy and silly in my hands. The joy in my chest curdled into something hard and shameful. "No, I came straight from the event," I mumbled. "Always remember your responsibilities, Ananya. Victories are temporary, duties are not." She finally glanced at me, not at the trophy, but at my face. "Now go, change out of that uniform, and don't be late for your tuition." I walked to my room, the trophy feeling like a block of ice. That night my father came in. He patted my shoulder. "She's very proud, you know. She told Mrs. Iyer next door all about it." It was meant to comfort me, but it broke my heart a little more. Why couldn't she tell me? The pattern continued into adulthood. When I got my first job, her comment was, "Government job, good, stable." When I brought home the man I would later marry, Rohan, she scrutinized his family, his job, his prospects, and finally said to me, "He is suitable. Not he makes you happy, or I like him. Just suitable." My wedding day was a masterpiece of her efficiency. Everything was flawless, beautiful, and perfectly on schedule. As she adjusted my veil in the mirror, a moment I had seen in so many movies, I held my breath. This was it. The moment she might say something tender. She met my eyes in the reflection. She gave a sharp, approving nod. "You look presentable." Then she turned to check if the flowers had arrived. Rohan's family was different. His mother hugged me tightly the first time we met. She called me Biddy, daughter, easily, freely. She asked about my feelings, my dreams. In their noisy, affectionate home, I felt like a sun-starved plant suddenly moved into the light. It was wonderful, and it was also deeply confusing. It showed me, in the clearest way, what I had never had. The contrast was a quiet, constant sorrow. When my father passed away 5 years ago, the fortress of my mother's personality seemed to turn to solid stone. She managed the funeral with a grim, dry-eyed efficiency that frightened people. I was drowning in grief, clinging to Rohan, needing my mother's comfort more than ever. One night broken, I went to her room. She was sitting upright in bed, staring at the wall. "Ma," I sobbed, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I miss him so much. How are you so strong?" She didn't look at me. Her voice was flat. "Tears won't bring him back. Go to sleep. You have responsibilities tomorrow." I left her room feeling more orphaned than ever. My buffer was gone. Now it was just me and the fortress, and the wall seemed higher than ever before. I began to think of her not as a mother who loved in a strange way, but as a woman who was, perhaps, incapable of the love I needed. And that thought was the loneliest of all. The turning point came with the birth of my daughter, Avni. The moment I held her, a terrifying, overwhelming love crashed over me. It was a raw, primal thing. I looked at her perfect face and thought, I will never, ever let you feel unsure of my love. In those first sleepless, beautiful months, my mother came to stay. She took over my kitchen. She organized the baby's clothes by size and color. She sterilized bottles with military precision. But she rarely held Avni just to cuddle her. She held her to feed her, to burp her, to change her. It was all function. One afternoon, I was exhausted. Avni had been crying for what felt like hours. I was rocking her, tears of frustration and tiredness streaming down my own face. My mother walked in, took the baby from my arms wordlessly, and began to walk up and down the hallway with a steady, firm rhythm. Avni's cries subsided into hiccups, then silence. I watched from the doorway. My mother was looking out the window, her back to me, still packing. She was humming, not a nursery rhyme, but an old film song from her youth. Her shoulder was a perfect pillow for Avni's head. In that profile, I didn't see the fortress. I saw a tired woman, once a young girl, humming to a baby. And I realized with a jolt, she had done this for me. This exact scene had played out with me in her arms decades ago. But when she turned and saw me watching, the moment shut down. Her face went neutral. She handed Avni back. "She was gassy. You need to burp her more thoroughly." And she walked away. Later that night, I found an old photo album buried in a cupboard. I was looking for pictures of my father, but I found one I had never seen before. It was of my mother, young, maybe in her early 20s. She was sitting on a swing, her head thrown back in laughter. Real, unguarded, joyous laughter. The sun was in her hair. She looked free. I stared at that girl. What happened to her? Where did she go? I took the photo to Rohan. "Who is this?" I whispered. He looked at it, then at my face. "It's your mother, Anu, can't you see?" "But she never laughs like this. I've never even seen her smile like this." He was silent for a moment. Maybe the girl in this picture got hurt very badly. Maybe she built the fortress to protect her. And maybe she thinks showing you the fortress is how she keeps you safe inside it too. His words hung in the air. They didn't excuse the hurt, but they offered a reason. A reason that wasn't about a lack of love, but about a broken understanding of how to show it. The fight wasn't between me and my mother. It was between me and the ghost of the hurt young woman she once was, and I was never going to win a fight against a ghost. I didn't have a dramatic confrontation. There was no tearful breakthrough. Instead, I began a quiet, internal shift. I stopped keeping a mental ledger of her slights, her missed opportunities for kindness. I stopped rehearsing speeches in my head about everything she had never given me. I started small. I called her every Sunday. I didn't call expecting a warm chat. I called to tell her about Avni's new tooth or about a new recipe I tried. I listened to her practical advice about storing mangoes or cleaning silver. I accepted it for what it was, her language of care. I visited with soup when she was ill. She would say, "You didn't have to come." I stopped hearing it as rejection. I started hearing it as her awkward way of saying, "I don't want to be a burden." So I'd just say, "I know," and leave the soup on the table. The hardest test came a year later. Avni took her first steps towards my mother. My mother was sitting on the sofa. Avni wobbled, arms outstretched, and fell into her lap. I held my breath. My mother looked down at the beaming, triumphant baby in her lap. She didn't swoop her up in a hug. She didn't cheer. She placed a steadying hand on Avni's back and said in her most serious tone, "Well done. Stable footing is important." And I laughed. I laughed a real, full laugh, because in that moment I heard it. I heard her. Well done was her "I'm so proud." Stable footing is important was her "I love you and I want you to be safe." It was all there, in her code, in her fortress language. I stopped waiting for her to come out and speak my language. I decided to learn hers. I started to see her actions for the love letters they were. The meticulously stocked fridge when I visited. The careful knitting of a sweater for Avni, exactly the right size. The way she always remembered Rohan liked less salt in his food. The apology I had waited for my whole life, for the withheld hugs, the missed praise, the emotional distance. It was never going to come. She could no more apologize for being herself than a bird could apologize for singing. The fortress wasn't something she had built to hurt me. It was the only home she knew how to live in. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about her saying sorry. It was about me finally understanding the story she had never told me. Today, my relationship with my mother is peaceful. It is not the relationship I dreamed of as a little girl. There are no long, cozy chats, no shared secrets, but there is a mutual, respectful truce. There is care. I see her now with clearer eyes, not just as my mother, but as Usha, a woman who survived her own storms and raised a daughter in the only way her bruised heart knew how. She gave me stability. She gave me discipline. She gave me a fierce work ethic. She showed me, in her own rigid way, what it means to be responsible for those you love. And I have given myself the gift of releasing the dream of a different mother. In doing that, I have made space to appreciate the one I have. I look at my own daughter, Avni. I shower her with the hugs and the loud, verbal love I never got. I tell her, "I love you 10 times a day." And sometimes, when I watch her sleep, a small, gentle thought comes to me. Maybe my mother looks at me the way I look at Avni. Maybe she feels the same overwhelming love. Maybe her heart swells with it. She just doesn't have the words or the tools to let it out. She will never say sorry, and that's all right, because I am no longer waiting for her apology to heal me. I forgave her anyway, not for her sake, but for mine, to lay down the heavy weight of my expectations, to stop banging on the gate of a fortress, and instead to simply appreciate the fact that inside she kept a garden, and she did, in her own way, try to send me its flowers. I learned that forgiveness is sometimes a quiet, one-sided ceremony. You don't need the other person to attend. You just need to decide to stop letting their past define your present and choose your own peace all by yourself.